What was the first question again?
Your question.
What was your first?
We know that people are made up of the 4 elements, and in each person, 1 or 2 of them are predominant, and that affects the way they behave in this world. Like if a person has a lot of fire, they will be prone to anger or excitement. And this, the 3 principles are saying, no, you're not stuck in any way of behaving. It's whatever thoughts you're getting in the moment, and you can change it, and I don't know, how does it stem?
Okay, so so that question, just to be very, very specific about it, we know from the Svarim that people are made up of 4 elements. That's one model: fire, water, air, and earth. Those are the 4 elements. Everyone is comprised of some combination of those 4 elements. And how do we reconcile that with the 3 principles? The 3 principles say that, well, what do the 3 principles have to say about it? Are the 3 principles in contradiction to that? Okay, that's one question. We'll try to clean that up. What was the other one? Are there personalities? That's the same question, really. See, it's just a different model.
Are they mental illness like schizophrenic and bipolar? That's another question.
Okay, so the second question is, are there personalities? So I think one of the ways that people are actually asking that question is it true that people are born with a personality that's stable over time just because that's who they are? And do the principles disagree with that? The next question is there such a thing as mental illness? Do people get schizophrenia? Do people get depressed? Are people anxious?
People get bipolar.
Bipolar. Yeah. Okay. And what was the 4th question?
Essie asked if people have bad relationships, mother and child, sisters, whatever, and maybe one of the people in the relationship are doing something wrong or something bad. How will the 3 principles help with that?
Okay. Let's see if we can make that question relevant. Well, certainly the principles aren't going to advise you about what you should do, right? But they do have something to say about the experience of how you're experiencing someone, where that comes from. They do have something to say about that. So let's try to see if we can build the foundation that will answer all 4 questions at once.
A friend of mine's son just came home after 3 weeks of being married. He previously wrong, one's bipolar. I don't know exactly which one. One of these type of things. During the entire engagement, they got over her, and they met, and they created whatever the nicest and everything. So I was thinking to myself, so what? He just was his thought in the moment that he decided that today that forget it.
Okay, so
that she's bipolar, or that she's impossible with, or that things came out, or whatever else, maybe in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Or it's his thought. He could change his thought, or he's just thinking about it, so he may as well just stay with her for the rest of his life. So it doesn't really make a difference who you married to, or just, well, you're not, or you are, because it's just you thinking about it.
Right. I can see that. I can imagine that this is not an easy scenario for you.
No, I'm saying, I'm just thinking, how does this work in like situations that really come up in life?
What do the principles have to say about it? And do the principles say?
I'm not in the first basis. I wouldn't call them up. So it wasn't like, I was thinking to myself, like, what if this classroom would be my son? What would I say? It's just you think about it? No.
Oh, it's not. I thought you said it was your son.
No.
Oh, I misunderstood. Oh, okay.
I'm not but whatever. Not my son. But I'm saying it's like that in real things. It's not, certain things are reality. This is not just thinking that. Everybody, well, parents and abundance and no, get out, because it's not just thinking that in this way.
I want to answer your question. I do. But it's not going to be in like a one-liner. You're going to have to listen to everything I'm about to say, all of it. Yeah. So you may not be able to do that. You may, your mind might wander. You may get a phone call. You may have something that you're going to attend to, and that's fine. You can do that. I'm just saying that if you're looking for an answer without kind of taking in the whole thing, so it's going to be a little bit difficult. Just want to say that. Okay. the way I'm hearing the question is what do the principles say about how you feel in your relationship? What does it say? What do the principles have anything to say about, well, you can just change your thought and you'll feel better? Because the principles say that or not. Let's see what the principles actually say. A lot of people learn the principles and they walk away with the idea that the principles are saying, well, it's all inside, so just change your thinking, get over it, basically. Yeah, just get over it. But the principles, in my estimation, don't say that at all. They don't say get over it. Okay, so let's see what they actually say. Again, it's to me, all 5 of these questions are the same question, just to me. And let's see if we can kind of lay out a foundation so we can see how we can answer all of them. Let's just go over them real quickly. Number 1, what do the principles have to say about the elemental model, about how we understand how we, our beings? Question number 2, what do the principles have to say about personalities? Number 3, what do the principles have to say about mental illness? Or the experience of schizophrenia, depression, or any of these, or bipolar, or anything like that. Number 4, what do the principles have to say about dealing with a family member that is misbehaving? And number 5, what do the principles have to say about marriage, about how you feel about it's time to leave or it's time to stay? Okay, is that very clear? Like, are those the 5 questions? Okay.
Tall order.
Huh?
The tall order.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a tall order
Because they all
for
come with
me.
one answer, one understanding.
It's an easy order for me to talk about, the answer. It's an impossible order, not tall, but impossible for me to make you see the answer. But let's talk about it. You listen to it and we'll see what we come up with. Okay, what are the principles?
Mind, thought, and consciousness.
I know, that's what we call them. But what are they? What is mind, thought, and consciousness is a metaphor. It's not the principles themselves are a metaphor. So maybe it's a wrong question to ask. What are the principles pointing to?
Where is my feeling coming from?
And how long?
How about give us 20 minutes? You think you can last 20 minutes?
Yeah.
I'm keeping an eye on the clock. What are the principles pointing to?
Where our experience is coming from.
Where are my feelings coming from?
Okay, so these are all great. Where are my feelings coming from? Understanding the system, all that kind of stuff. Those are all more metaphors. Yeah. The principles and all the ways that we try to express the principles are just metaphorical. All these terms are pointing to something that is unsayable. It can't be said. The reason why I'm saying this is not to make it seem so far away, but I'm just trying to highlight the fact that we'll talk about the principles, but you can only see them within yourself. And it will be, when you see them, it'll show up as a particular expression, but you have to see beyond the words, you have to see beyond the expressions. And then you'll express that knowing, that knowledge that's really unsayable. You'll express a piece this way, you'll express a piece that way. But what the principles are pointing to is what we're really after. Okay? And everything that I say is going to be just another metaphor pointing to another aspect of what flows out of my seeing what's beyond the principles. Here's the simplest expression that I have for it. Forget about mind, consciousness, and thought. Let's use a different metaphor. And we'll use the metaphor of a mirror. Whatever you see in the mirror, the reflection that you see in the mirror, is always going to be a perfect reflection, really, of what's in front of it. Correct? I'm losing people left and right here. Okay. Now, without any, you already know this about mirrors. It's without a doubt that the only way something can get in that mirror is if it's in front of it, right? Everyone knows that. Okay. Another metaphor that Brett Chitty gave me is, if you hear something coming out of the phone, out of the receiving end of the phone, it's coming in from some other end. It can't come out any other way. Yes? This entire world including the physical parts of this world and your mental experience of it, your psychological experience of it, is a perfect reflection of a divine will. That's one way to say the principles. Another way to call this divine will is mind, consciousness, and thought. Now, we already know, because we're Orthodox Jews, that we're talking about God here, and we know that God is not just before the world. It's not like he said, let something happen and somebody went and someone went and kind of did it. His saying, let something be, is the existence of that thing and down in this world. There's two worlds. There's an upper world where this divine energy is saying, let there be a certain thing, and poof, it shows up by virtue of that statement. One turns into the other. Two sides of the same coin. You've heard that term before. This world and everything in it is the other side of one coin. What's on the other side? A divine energy in potential. A potential energy that's saying, let there be sun, and there's a sun. We only get to see one side of the coin. We don't get to see the other side. We don't get to experience the divine will because it doesn't exist yet. It's just a will. We only get to exist or experience what it has created. That's a principle. That's a paradigm through which we can understand all existence. With me so far? Okay. Now let's see if we can knock off all 5 questions. Number 1, are people made up of elements? Certainly. What elements are you made up of? Well, a combination of the 4 elements, like we mentioned before. But your specific configuration of elements in which you find yourself is a perfect reflection of a divine will in that moment. You with me on that? Did that clarify? So the 3 principles are not saying, no, there aren't 4 elements. There are 4 elements. But the existence of the 4 elements and the combinations or variations that you have in you are a perfect reflection of a divine will that is coming to you. We're calling that divine will, for short, we're calling it thought. Divine thought, God thought.
Which means you're not locked into any one of them. Is that correct? That's how you're not locked into any.
Well, we'll get into implications later, but that's just the basic principle of it. Whatever exists is a reflection of a divine will. You can't get away from, you can't get outside of that. What are you asking?
I think divine will is a very nice way of saying better than thought.
Better what?
It's better than thought.
Yeah.
It has less implications of other things. A thought takes you to other places.
Yeah. It is confusing.
Isn't
It can
divine
be.
will Hashem?
Isn't mind, isn't mind divine will?
Yeah, all 3 principles are pointing to the same thing. The Sfarim also use interchangeable terms. They'll call it a divine Ratzon or a divine will. They'll also call it a divine Das or a divine Chachma, which is translated as thought or intelligence. So it's not like these terms are new. It is difficult to find the perfect words to describe something that is indescribable. One such word that we can use is divine thought, universal thought, the power of thought. It's also still not clear, by the way. This power of thought takes it takes thinking, it takes divine thinking, and turns it into the reality that you now see. To what degree do you influence or have any type of impact about what's going into the power of thought that gets turned into the reality that you see is still debatable. I don't know. Maybe some of it is just directly God's decree. Maybe some of it you chose. I don't know. But either way, it's still working this one way, that what is here in this world is a perfect reflection of a divine decree. It has to be. Okay, so to answer the first question, are there 4 elements? Well, yeah. If the divine will says, let there be 4 elements, there'll be 4 elements. Yeah? So no contradiction there. We're not talking about that they don't exist. We're just trying to understand how these 4 elements got here. Are there personalities? Yeah, there's personalities. How did they get here? Well, the same way. With me? Now, what Mrs. Montag was pointing out, we're just going to step briefly into implication of this. The process of creating a person's personality or their combination of elements happens now. and then now again, each moment anew, which means if we want to look at someone's past or the last 50 years, and we can see basically over the last 50 years, they've had a pretty stable personality. We can say that for the last 50 years, what's been created for this individual has been a certain type of personality. Does that have anything to say about the future for that person on a fundamental level? Can we say that this person is no longer capable of changing? Can we say that this person is that personality and it's a part of them and they can't get away from it? We can't say that, because I don't know what they're going to be I don't know what I'm going to be in the next moment. I got to find out. I got to get there first to find out what it is. So we're not denying that people have personalities in the past, but we are bringing into focus the fact that who you are tomorrow is still unknown. Who you are in 10 seconds from now is still unknown. That's a big implication. So the same scenario that really gets your goat every time may not the next time. You should check each time to see if it's actually getting your goat before you decide to get your own goat. Yeah. Okay. Third question. Elements, personality, mental illness. Does mental illness exist? I wouldn't call it mental illness. I would ask it this way. Is it true that people have experiences where they feel depressed? Certainly. Do people feel anxious? Often. Do people hear voices? Do they qualify for what's called schizophrenia and see realities that the rest of us don't? Certainly. What's generating that for them? A divine will, divine thought. It's an inside job. It's not in their body. It's not inherent in who they are. It is an experience that they are having and have had. Does that say anything about what's possible for them, about their ability to find new experience, about their ability to be okay with that experience? It says nothing about that. It doesn't say that it's etched in them. And in fact, it shows us something about those experiences that are way less definitive. They exist in that moment alone. That's all the principles have to say about it. So do people get ill for a moment? Maybe. They feel really bad. But do they break? Impossible. Question number 3.
Does that mean to say, excuse me for interjecting, but does that mean to say that if a bipolar person has an understanding that he's having a bipolar experience, there's a possibility for him to no longer, or to not medicate, let's say, or not be treated psychiatrically because he now has an understanding that he's not bipolar, he's rather having a manic experience?
Well, that would be up to the psychiatrist to decide. Sometimes it may be.
I'm saying, would it? Because we could think that the psychiatrist would say bipolar, end of story, medication rest of your life. So in this innate mindful understanding, is it possible that could be challenged by thinking if he understands that he's having a bipolar thought, a manic thought or depressive thought, and once he has that insight about that, then possibly he could ride that thought and get off his medicine?
That doesn't make perfect sense to me. I'll tell you why. I mean, if somebody is just finding themselves in a very low feeling and they understand that it's thought and they're healthy, they're safe, they're whole, then nothing needs to be done. Okay? But if they get so low, they forget so utterly and completely that they're feeling thought, and they begin to act out on those experiences in ways that are hurtful to themselves or others, it may be appropriate to be on medication.
But once they have this understanding, is it possible that next time let's say they're on this medication for a month, and then they start to begin a little calmer or better or whatever, and start to realize, oh, maybe that's a very low mood bipolar and it will pass. Could that understanding potentially allow them perhaps to get off that medication, or to change their protocol, or whatever it may be? Is that a possibility?
It's a possibility, but I think it takes a professional to really, or someone really honest with themselves to say, look, I know how lost I get. Yeah. It makes sense to me to put up some fences to help me out when I lose sight of the truth and get unhealthy. So unhealthy that I misbehave in ways that I really regret. So the principles do not, just because the principles are true doesn't mean people know them all the time. And sometimes people get so lost that medication is appropriate. But I think, but medication is not a cure. It's just something that'll
But
will help.
once maybe they're on medication, maybe they could think it through better.
Yeah.
And maybe understand better, because.
Yeah. Often people get on medication. If they believe it's a cure, they'll be waiting a long time. But if often medication gets them into a place where they can finally have a conversation about the principles, and they'll find that those same experiences show up, they have less of a hold on them. That's often an outcome.
So what are the fences you're talking about? Is there different fences? What are you talking about?
Whatever you think will help you out for someone who knows that there a moment may come where I make it it looks logical for me to jump off the edge, right? So whatever that edge might be, put up a fence there. So some people have a friend who will be honest with them if they're misbehaving, but I can't see it. I don't know if a lot of people, but some people have friends that they know love them and care about them and will be straight with them and say, hey, you're out of line. Yeah. Make that fence. Get a friend like that. It's Chazal's suggestion. Yeah. Another fence is Aseh Lecha Rav. There's lots of fences you can do. Whatever fence you think is appropriate for you. But the principles don't say make a fence. The principles are just saying, look, this is what's going on. It then makes sense to me to maybe make some fences. But even if I don't make fences, no one can break so utterly and completely that they can't recover. But that's a separate implication. Let's get to questions 3 and 4. Question 3, what do the principles have to say about family members who are misbehaving? Do the principles say, well, just be nice to them anyway? I don't know. I don't think the principles suggest that at all. The principles aren't a value system. They're not telling you how to behave or not behave. They are saying, look, people misbehave. That happens. How you experience other people's misbehavior happens completely within you. So there will be moments where people are misbehaving and you feel really, really upset about it. And you understand that it's your own thinking. And then you'll be able to make informed decisions about how to or whether to deal with someone who's misbehaving in an informed way, in a realistic way. Other times, other people will be misbehaving. You'll forget that your feeling of being really insulted or upset or whatever it is that you're feeling, you'll forget that it's coming from thought. You'll attribute it to them, and you'll deal with them in a very different way. You deal with the situation in a very different way. The principles aren't saying do one over the other. The principles are just saying, look, here's what happens to us. People misbehave. We get a feeling. And sometimes we know that feeling is coming from our own thinking, our own divine configuration. Other times we forget. When we know, this is how our life turns out. When we forget, this is how our life turns out. The principles aren't even saying don't forget. They're just highlighting this is what happens to all of us when we forget. When we forget where our feelings are coming from, we end up doing a lot of illogical things, but they look really logical to us. Blame looks logical. It looks logical to blame my feeling on you when I forget the principles. That happens to us. Good to know. Does that answer your question? Number 5. People get married. The scenario is someone got married, they found out that their spouse was bipolar, and they recently left their wife after, 3 weeks, 4 weeks? Okay. What do the principles have to say about that? Do the principles say that you shouldn't live with someone who's bipolar? Principles don't say that. Do the principles say that you should, if you're living with someone who's bipolar and you're upset and angry and frustrated that they did not tell you beforehand, that's inherent, everyone should feel that way in such a situation? The principles say no, just the opposite. There is no feeling that comes with finding out that a spouse who you previously thought was perfectly normal is bipolar, that has some sort of feeling with it. The principles say no, it doesn't come with a feeling. You're going to feel about that exactly the way that you think in that moment. Knowing that gives you or puts you on a platform where you can actually decide, I know this feeling of being really disappointed and frustrated about finding out that my spouse is bipolar is on me. But still, do I want to stay or do I want to go? That's up to me. Now, that's a big decision when you know it's on you. It's an excuse to leave when you're blaming the spouse.
But
You're,
it's a
in
real
essence,
situation, obviously. It is, if somebody is acting the way they're acting,
it's real.
why would this person want to be stuck in a marriage like this? They just got married, it's 2 weeks,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, good question. It could be that it was the right thing for that person based on their guidance and their knowledge and their understanding that it is right to leave. But not for the reason because it's making them feel bad or insecure. If they're making that decision based on a falsehood, then the decision is it still might be the right decision, but it's very, very shaky. Meaning it might be right, it might be wrong. I don't know if they should stay or leave. Yeah. But if the decision is based on the idea that it's impossible to be happy and connected and fulfilled in this marriage because of the way she is, that would be a false conclusion. That's bad intel. That's not how it works. You can't make decisions based on that because it's just not true. Unless you forget. If you forget and start to believe that you're being really upset and angry. Some people find out their spouse is bipolar. Hold on, let me just say this one piece. Some people find out their spouse is suffering. They don't feel frustrated. They don't feel angry. They don't feel betrayed. They feel compassion. I'm not saying you should. I'm saying that, look, there's other ways to feel about it. Don't blame it on them. Now, I know it's hard because of the way that we think about marriage and dating and people trusting each other. It can really look like, no. The feeling that I'm having about this person is justified. Not only is it justified, but the situation calls for it.
Right.
But there's no such thing in the world as a situation that calls for any feeling. So when you know that, you have a chance to then go and really make your decision about whether to stay or go based on other criteria, not the criteria of you perpetuating the idea that if I get my life in a specific type of format, then I can finally feel good. That's the definition of mental illness. What do you want to ask? Who was first? You had something.
But
Yeah.
you don't have to answer because it has nothing to do with the 3 principles.
I'll make it about the 3 principles.
It seems to me that there's a lot of this going on, like young people getting married and after a little while realizing that somebody's sick.
Mm-hmm.
And I never heard of this like years ago, like when I got married in the olden days. When I got married. I don't know, like is it just like much more prevalent in the world in general, or is it just that people have no endurance anymore? They don't want to stick anything out. I'm trying to make some sense out of it.
Now, I'm not one to refer to non-Jewish customs as a guidance for us, but do you know what the non-Jews say by their ceremony when they get married? What do they say by their ceremony?
Sickness and health.
Better for worse, for sickness
Better,
and
yeah.
health. For this.
Till when? Till it starts raining?
Till death do us
So
part.
that's the right.
Till
Till death do us part. That's what it is.
Well, I'll tell you why, Mrs. Montag. I'm referring to it because it's a very powerful statement. Whoever wrote that statement was recognizing that there's a whole bunch of things that can change in your spouse, physically, mentally, emotionally, yeah? And that the institution of marriage was based in, I'm committed no matter what. Till when? Till I can't be committed anymore because I've died.
Someone should check if that guy stayed married his whole life, and
Yeah.
whatever.
No, I don't think that's the point at all.
Wow.
The point is that there's something about commitment, yeah,
Only
There
when
is
things
a
are going
kind of a
wrong.
commitment that people make. If you make that kind of commitment, that would see a person through anything. They'd stay committed through anything. Now, if somebody did not make that commitment, now again, where's that commitment coming from? It's coming from within you. If someone in their own mind, when they put the ring on the finger, they said, I'm committed, unless I find out she has mental illness, then fine, they're going to leave if they find out she's got mental illness. But that's not because, it's not like inherent in finding out that a spouse has mental illness means you need to leave. It's inherent in your commitment. It's back to your own experience of it. You can't get away from it. Do you see what I'm saying? This is not easy to hear because some people are so
Hung up on this.
yeah.
No, because you're leaving something out also, that when the person made the commitment, possibly, let's say they made that commitment, and then they find out the spouse is bipolar, right? They made that commitment in good faith, and mekach if the other spouse didn't disclose that they have a mental illness.
Mhm.
So you're
Okay.
leaving out that part of the condition, that when it was, I'll love you till death do us part, that's if I have all the facts in front of me that are present at this moment. But if I don't have all the facts, and then if someone wakes up and finds out the spouse, you're right, maybe they're not telling them nothing what they have to do. But it is perhaps, the parameters are all different, because when they made that condition of the floor, but they were not informed of the facts on hand at the present moment.
No, why was this a question to me? Because my husband's involved in money together for this wedding.
Doesn't involve the funds?
But he's getting money for this wedding.
He raised a lot of money for a wedding that lasted, a marriage that lasted 4 weeks.
So now there's
That wasn't
money that
Ed.
has to be spent for the,
He doesn't, God forbid, regret the money that he raised.
That's not the point.
He'd lose the whole merit
So
of it.
what I'm thinking is that I was thinking to myself, like, through innate health school, this could help. She could become unbipolar, and he could become uncaring that she's bipolar. So like, really, it could be helpful. It's just, you know.
You can't become.
I'm saying, we're saying that,
That's very far.
I'm just saying, whenever we discuss this, so she's really not bipolar, and he really doesn't have to understand her or perceive her as bipolar. So life could be solved.
Oh, no, that's not what I'm saying. It's close. It is true.
Life could be solved by everything, this could be solved.
Yeah.
What I can say is that she's bipolar. Yeah. Doctor said so. She
It's only
can,
the doctor's perception of it. It's only her perception of what the doctor said. It's only her thought about what she saw. You know what I'm saying? You can go on and on if you want, but.
Based on.
oh, no. You can go on and on in that direction and never get anywhere. But if you go in my direction, you'll get somewhere very quickly.
Okay.
It is true that she tomorrow may not but have bipolar experiences.
One day you're bipolar and the next day you're not? No, I don't think so.
According to Nate, yeah.
It's possible, yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I wouldn't know.
Okay.
Baruch Hashem. But
Well, I don't know because I've experienced so much bipolar or so many people that are bipolar. I know it's possible because of the logic that's behind life
I'll take
itself.
borderline. Who cares what they call it? And I'm saying it doesn't make a difference.
What was the last thing I said?
Logic behind life.
I'm assuming, I know that I lose people's attention. That's fine. Yeah.
You know what?
I know that I lose people's attention while I'm talking. I'm okay with that. But I want you also to realize that sometimes you lose attention to what I'm saying. Yeah. That means you're sometimes missing the punchline.
fine. Okay.
Yeah. You missed the punchline. I'm just telling you that because it's like it's a misunderstanding to think that I've gone to the class and I've taken it all in when your mind is still racing. So come back. Yeah. It's okay that you do that, but I'd like you to see that happens from time to time. It happens to me too. I hear your question. It's a powerful question, but there's an answer. The reason I know that people can change from having bipolar experiences to no longer having bipolar experiences. Do you know how I know that? Is it based on studies or evidence or experience? It's not based on any of that. It's based on the knowledge of how the system works. Do you know what that means? Does that make sense? I know how the system works. Because I know how the system works, I know it's possible. If you don't know how the system works, It seems crazy to say such a thing. What is the system? You want to say something?
No.
Go ahead. Come on. What's the system? What creates human experience?
Power of God in the moment.
A divine energy turning into this reality right now. That system is free to be anything it wants in this moment, regardless of anything else that exists in this moment, and regardless of anything that's been in the past. Am I saying that's going to happen, or that I should assume that it's going to happen? No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying you have to see that it's possible. That's very different than, well, let me just change the way that I see her. I'm not saying that people do that. I don't know if the marriage is salvageable. If he's seeing her in a very negative way, I don't know. I mean, how long should he wait for that to change? I don't think he should wait at all. If you asked me my advice, I think he should also leave. But that's not the point. What I'm trying to highlight here is that why did he decide to leave? Because his feeling was attached to the way she is. I can't be happy in this scenario.
And he doesn't want to deal with it.
Doesn't want to deal with it.
You
That's-
blame him?
Those
That's
are his
not
thoughts.
that's not the issue, yeah.
That's his thought in the moment.
That's not the issue. We're getting, that's not,
No, but your issue is that you put so much focus into
no, that's
this.
not my truth. It's not, yeah, I'm not so personally invested in this. And that's why I thought it's a good example, because I don't have to get involved in my personal
Yeah.
feelings.
Right.
Again, whether you should leave or not, I don't know.
It's
But-
our decision.
Hmm?
It's not our decision.
Right.
I know that. What I'm saying is I'm not making a comment about he should have left, he shouldn't have left. I don't know. I am making a comment on the basis. If his basis of leaving is because I'll never be able to be happy in this relationship based on who she is today, then that's a bad logic. It doesn't work that way. So someone,
And if his basis of decision is saying, I'm leaving because she lied to me, that's betrayal, she didn't tell me. So that's also occurred, but I'm leaving because my thinking in the moment is like, oh my gosh, how could she enter into a marriage and not tell me something of such critical importance?
This is sort of a continuation from your yesterday's,
yeah.
right? Unhealthy relationships.
A person can leave the relationship saying, well, listen, she lied to me. And, it's not about that it makes me feel bad, but having a lying spouse is going to influence my kids, and my kids are going to grow up thinking that, might be influenced by a liar, and I don't want my kids. I mean, you can make all kinds of things. If that's how you think, then that's how you're going to experience it. Someone else might see it a very different way. You just need, the principles are just saying, look, sometimes it's always working one way. The way you see it is happening within you. Sometimes you know that, sometimes you don't. Sometimes I forget so much. It's as if I shouldn't even be giving classes, yeah. But then I remember, yeah. So as opposed to any other self-help group that you've gone to, I am not encouraging you to be a better person. I'm not encouraging you to remember more often. We're just, right now, we're just examining. Each time anew, we're examining again. Okay, let's sit down and examine again. How does it work? You know that time that someone did something to me and I got really upset, and how could they do that? What was going on there that you got so upset about it? Was it because of what they did, or was the upset feeling rooted in some way that you must have been looking at it? Which is fine. But is that true? Or was it what they did directly impacting you? What's the answer today? Think back to a time that maybe in the last week or early this morning or last month where you got really, really upset, crying and carrying on. What happened there?
Thought in the moment.
Sure, but did you know it then?
No,
Probably if you had a hissy fit, then you didn't.
right.
I'm not talking theoretical.
Yeah, when we-
Imagine, come on, you all got a moment. You all got something in the last couple of weeks or something.
Now,
All
what
right?
happened? And this is the beginning of it. What
We're
happened
thinking
the last-
back is there a moment in the last couple of weeks or month or whatever it is where you got really, really upset? Really upset. I mean, seriously upset. Think back. In that moment, were you attributing that feeling to your own thinking in the moment? Or in that moment, were you attributing your feeling to what was going on around you?
No, for sure.
What was
going
going
on?
Oh, okay.
What and who?
To what and whom? Yeah, exactly. Now that happens to me too. That happens to everybody. And I'm not saying that that's going to stop happening. But at least now, today, we're like, oh, that's what happened. It's not like that person was so bad and so evil that they had the power to make me feel the way that I felt. Could be that what they did, they shouldn't have done. I don't know. But my experience of it was just where I was at in that moment, in my feeling, and I forgot about that in that moment. But today you remember. Yeah. That's very different than, the next time you get really mad, what you should do is pull out your sticky notepad and just stick it on your forehead. I'm feeling thought in the moment and I can't remember. Like, I mean, that seems a little silly to me, but maybe if you want to do that.
I walk around.
I'm more
Stuck up with
a bunch of sticky papers all over me.
I walked into my brother's house last Thursday night, and he has an office, Svarmsteed, and his mother-in-law is in town, and they have a great relationship. And she's into self-help and these types of things. And in the office, all around, there were these green neon sticky notes. Each one had a different inspirational thing written on it that she had written. So I took 3 sticky notes and wrote stuff and stuck it on her door. Stuff like, don't be like a sticky note, always just barely hanging on. Or I don't know what the other ones were, but I poked fun at her. She appreciated it. It's nice to try to do that. I'm not saying don't make your sticky notes, but I'm not encouraging you one way or the other. We're just looking at the facts of it. It works one way. Sometimes we know it, sometimes we don't. I'm not advocating that you drop your thinking. I am not suggesting.
Even if you advocate, it's not happening.
Even if
you would, like, what would help us?
Well, so the question is effortfully trying to refocus your mind an appropriate
Solution.
Is that an appropriate action to take given the circumstance, given the state that you're in? Maybe that's a good thing to do. I don't know. Go for a walk. Well, maybe you want to go for a walk, go for a walk. Does trying to refocus your mind or going for a walk or eating ice cream or speaking it over with a friend, do those in and of themselves have any power to change your experience? No. Are they appropriate to do? Maybe. I don't know. You'll decide. Sometimes it's appropriate to do nothing. I don't know. Whatever guide you use to determine whether a certain behavior is warranted given the situation, you'll use that guide. Our guide is the Torah, coupled together with guidance from our Rabbanim, who we know love and care about us. But someone else might have another guide. That's our guide. So the principles are not saying do nothing. They're saying that if the situation warrants that you do something, it still holds no power. It still requires, for there to be actual change in your experience, you need to be gifted with new thought. A new divine will has to come through. There was this book written in the principles world, big red title, Do Nothing. And what kind of got filtered into the community was that there was this idea that you can just sit back and do nothing. I don't know. I don't think the principles have anything to do with that at all. Maybe there are times where you find out that you've been trying to control your world so hard that you're going to get it done, and then you realize, oh, wait a second. I don't make anything happen just by my actions, and sometimes that leads people to say, okay, fine, I'm doing nothing then. Well, it's a cop-out because they didn't really understand the principles. Yeah. Principles don't make a comment about whether you should or shouldn't do something. Did we get to all 5 questions?
It's very good. I have nothing down.
Let's talk about a little about duality. The reason I want to talk about duality is because there's a talk that my teachers told me to listen to about duality. So I'm going to be really clear about what I know about duality now, so that when I go listen to the talk, I'll learn something new. Okay. The principles show us that there is no duality in a very specific way. So some people, when they learned the principles and they saw the divine nature of all of life, the oneness of life, they'll say some very syrupy things like, we're all one, we're all just one unit. There's no separation between you and me, right? Well, maybe, but not in the way that they're talking about. There is separation. I'm separate from you. I have my body, I have my life, I have my mental experience. It's separate from yours. There is separation. The principles don't say that we're all just one big soup. Yeah. There is no duality with regards to how all that gets created. There is a divine oneness that puts back together the spiritual and the physical, formless into form. There is no separation between formless and form, but in our world of form, there is separation. It's just that the separateness in which we find ourselves all flows from one source. Now, we live in this world, so we're all separate. But our essence, our origins are all one. And we are one with that origin. This shows us something about reality. There might be one reality, one world, one globe, one universe. But how that universe is experienced is highly diverse. It will be as diverse given how many people there are in the world. That's how many different ways there are to experience this same world. Given the number of people in the room, that's how many ways there are to experience the room. Given how many moments there are in your life, that's how many different moments you have to experience your life differently. We're just seeing that our reality as it is in the moment is in no which way, manner, or form created by or influenced by the world around us. It's a perfect outgrowth of divine thought in the moment for us. That means separate realities is a fact, not a nice idea reserved for the Twilight Zone show. It's real. People see different worlds. You see different worlds based on the moment or based on your shifts in thought. Your world changes. My suggestion to you isn't, well, therefore go try to arrest a certain kind of thinking so you can have a certain type of reality. I haven't found anyone who can do that. However, it does show us, oh, look at that. Everyone's seeing a different world. That's good to know. It's good to know that that's a fact. It's good to know that when you run into somebody else who's looking at the same thing as you and saying, no, it's green, no, it's red, it's a different color than you think, well, that will make sense. That won't freak you out as much. Green is a yellow dress, blue dress. Yeah. Well, yeah. People are going to see it the way they see it. I'm not freaked out about that. And I don't need to negate your view just to be able to feel comfortable with my own. We finally have a chance to actually listen to each other. Where before we didn't, because it was kind of like, I'll listen to you, but only in as far as I need to protect myself, to convince myself how wrong you are. Two views are possible on the same subject, even physically. People can see and experience a different world. So that's my understanding of the principles showing us that there's no duality. There aren't two sources for experience. There's one source for experience. There's one direct line. Yeah.
I don't understand. What does it mean that there's a separation? I understand there must be some separation. It's not something we can fathom. Or what do you know about it? That the formless turning formless separation. What does it mean?
Okay, so what I said was that we see there's no separation between the formless and the form. The formless turns into the form. They're one and the same. This divine energy turns into the reality that we now experience. There's no separation between that. But in the form of this world, which is created by the formless, there is separation. We are separate. We're unique. We're distinct. We have different minds. But separation is just down here in this world. In that realm, which we never really get to see or experience.
It's really paradise, but it's beautiful when you can see it as, when you can sit with it and understand that even paradox exists, and it's something that is, it's created by Hashem. But I can understand that, well, one, and I can also understand that whatever I do influences the world. And I see it as a paradox, but I can sometimes when I see it, be okay to understand that there's separation and there's oneness, and it's just right. It's very nice.
There is oneness that way. I'm not disagreeing with that. But how that works, how do you influence the world? Not directly, that's for sure. You influence the world, but this is really the Yiddish tradition. The way you act is accounted for on high.
Yeah, this
And
is
then-
what I meant.
yeah. I'm not saying that you don't matter or that you don't impact other people, but not directly, ever. You don't have that power. At least the principles show us that we don't have that power, although it really seems like we do. That's very compelling.
You think it's the other person's thinking in the moment.
Yeah, the world is the way the world is based on a divine will. I can suggest that the will go a certain direction, and maybe it accounts for my actions, but still what comes down is a necessary step.
So what's the difference between the duality and divine will? No, the duality and separate realities. Separate, what we spoke about.
Yeah.
Separate realities.
Yeah, so duality, non-duality, meaning the fact that there is no duality with the origin of experience, still is synonymous with separate realities. You can have one source and many different worlds. So there is no duality when it comes to the source, but there is separateness in what's been created. But still, why can't we all just get along? Yeah. So I'm going to try to schlep you in a certain direction. I don't know if I should do this. It's really not nice, but you can handle seeing the logic. Like you can handle admitting to yourself that the feelings that you feel are on you, are coming to you, and are not inherent in the situation. You can handle that. Even if someone is wronging you, even if someone is mistreating you, even if someone's abusing you, you should probably get them to stop. But the feelings that you have are not etched in their behavior. They can't do that to you. You can handle that. You can also handle the fact that sometimes you just get crazy feelings. That happens. Let's stop defining our mental well-being by the feeling that we are having. Let's embrace the fact that we're going to have all kinds of feelings. That's normal. Even if someone else called it abnormal in some big fat book that called a whole bunch of behaviors abnormal, we don't have to agree to the DSM that that's abnormal psychology. It's normal to have feelings that are of the full spectrum. What's unhealthy is every time you forget their source. That'll kill you. So I'm not impressed by people who have their principles and are having a wonderful life. That doesn't impress me. What impresses me is people who learn their principles and are still having all types of feelings and are okay with it. That impresses me. But don't expect it to all happen at once. It's a gradual thing for some people. For others, they have a big flash in the pan moment. Oh no, not flash in the pan, a big aha moment. Flash in the pan sounds like it lasts a second. Some people have it, it just lasts a second too. But it's the logic that's constant. It's the logic that's always true, that when you get a glimpse of it, you're going to start to get more and more comfortable with all your feelings, less scared of them, less needing to find a blame for it. Who's doing this to me? No, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with the darkest, most disgusting feelings. And you can handle all that. I'd like to remind you that although it feels like this is a very heavy subject, it is not. We're just thinking about it that way right now, maybe. All right, it's 5 after. I think that's enough effort for today. Mrs. Montag, are we back here next week? Okay, so unless Esther requests, we'll assume that we're back here next week. Thank you. Did you get to play the CDs?
Thank you. They're in my car.
Oh,
They're
okay.
very, very nice. I sent Rivers and Chris the email.
Oh, yeah? Very good.
Join them. Reverend Chris's composition is played by the Milwaukee Symphony.
Steve, would you like to take a donut?
No.
Good.
Yeah? Okay. Maybe if we could wrap one up. Something that's not too crummy.
Not to
My car is Pacific.
Oh, you don't have to eat it in the car. You could
This actually looks very very good.
It is. They all are.
Totally unhealthy.
You go be having more than one. One of these Thank you.
Yeah, it's 99. Yay. Yeah, I'm gonna put the
That's a miracle week.
So when so now it's here, and I thought, okay, so.
Oh, thank you.
Which one you want, this?
I'm still deciding. I should take this one?
Which one
It's
did you
soft
want?
inside? Yeah. We'll
They
take
all
this.
are. They're really good.
Thank you. Wait, you stay in there?
I was there with the friend of